Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We have a returning guest to the show, a man who is all about radio. He's also a businessman. He's expanded the family of his radio stations, and we're going to talk community radio here as well. My friend Chris DiPaolo, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hello, Sean. Thanks for having me again.
Always a pleasure. Now, you are the man around town when it comes to the greater Westerly, Rhode Island area. It's more than that, but you have 1230 WBLQ, you have 96.7 The Buzz, and you have a news station that we will talk about a little later. Tell us about that briefly right now.
The news station is licensed to Coventry, Rhode Island, covers Coventry, West Warwick. The call letters are WWRILP, and the nickname is I-95.1. It's right near Route 95. So.
Stop talking like a radio personality, by the way, too.
Sorry.
Let's just have a conversation. You're also a businessman, too. You're involved in the downtown business. Are you still president of the Downtown Business Association?
No, those are actually one-year terms.
Okay, so term limits,
but
like the bigger boys should have, but don't.
But however, I was in there for 2 years, and I'm not saying that because you know, for any egotistical reasons or anything. But
you're bragging, though.
I am bragging a little bit, but yeah, they elected me for 2 years, and I enjoyed doing it. And I was actually on the board from '08 to 2012, so I was secretary till 2014. So I was secretary the final year.
Are you not on the board anymore?
Just a member these days.
A member, okay.
Yes.
So you are a broadcaster and you are a businessman, a business owner. What would you describe yourself as first?
First, somebody who cares about the area. I mean, I love Westerly and Stonington, where
you grew up there, right?
I grew up there, and that's where I started out. So I love that area. And when the opportunity to take a license over in Kent County, Rhode Island, came up, and the price was right to get involved, and I'll tell you more about that as we go along about how that came to be. I couldn't say no, and I knew it was an area that had also been without local radio for many years, and much longer than Westerly had. I mean, when I jumped into the Westerly area, there was another local station there that actually we were simultaneously on the air for about a year. We were actually competitors. So Westerly area was really never without local radio, where up in the Coventry area, there was a station on the air there for many years, 1450 AM, which is now corporately owned, and not to say anything bad about the corporation Hall who owns it. I get along with them
I like
as
that
well.
company. They're good people.
They're good people.
Yeah.
But their direction with the programming is to go with a syndicated ESPN format.
Right.
So that area had been underserved, by the local radio standpoint. And I just looked at the area. I talked to people, and I said, what would work in that area? And I figured classic rock. By talking to everybody, but not just the classic rock, kind of classic rock with a full-service way to do things. So we're doing the classic rock, and we are doing the news. A lot of the stuff similar to what we're doing on WBLQ. I mean, the accent's on music, but we still, we're doing the news, we're doing some local sports, and we're having local interviews on in between the songs, where we won't do hour talk shows. We play so many songs an hour, but we'll play a couple of records. We say records in radio. We'll play a couple of records, and then I might have the person, the head of the Chamber of Commerce on, or the head of the Johnson's Pond Association, and that's like the Musquamacut up there in Coventry. Everybody goes to Johnson's Pond in the summer.
So when you were, did you think was your career path laid out when you were very young? Did you know? Because I tell this story. My mom said I used to play DJ on the floor when I was a little kid. And then as I got into my teen years, I got the local DJ job at the roller skating rink. And from there, into radio, because I do a morning radio show, too, as well as this TV show.
Do you really?
I do. I don't know if you knew that or not.
You sound familiar.
But, so I ask you, a man who has radio and broadcasting in general in your blood, did you know very early on, what were the signs for you that broadcasting would be your thing?
Well, as I might have told you before, might have told your viewers, when I was very young, and I mean in my infancy, my parents tell me this because obviously I don't remember. We're talking infancy, that I used to cry very loudly, and then they would turn a radio on very loudly, and that's what would get me to quiet down.
That soothes the savage beast, does it?
It really soothed me, and ever since then, I just remember, I mean, I was born in '73, And I remember in my earlier childhood days, I remember my father had Imus in the Morning on, and I grew up listening to WNBC and some of the other stations too. I mean, he had what was the local station in Westerly at the time on every now and then, but it was primarily New York radio. New York radio is what really gave me my interest. And as I got a little older, like, wow, these I really love what these guys are doing. I love the jingles. I grew up listening to WNBC in New York.
And there were legendary personalities on the air there. You know, Imus and Stern and all those people started there, you know? Or not started there, but ended up, their careers really catapulted there. You know?
It was a great station to listen to, very personality-oriented, and I loved the jingles. And they were doing top 40 on AM radio, top 40/ rock and roll. They were a very loud, young AM station in the 80s. And I would tune around the dial as my interest grew. I remember turning on Pro FM in Providence, and I'm like, that's a WNBC jingle, and I'm probably like 8 or 9 years old. Why are and I thought they were stealing the jingles from WNBC. Why am I hearing the same jingles? Because I heard 66 on WNBC, and I heard With the Hits on Pro FM. I'm like, they're singing that the exact same way. And then I realized, oh, these jingle companies, it's the same jingles, it's just a different market.
They customize them for different stations in different markets.
So that was one of the first things I probably learned in radio, was how they customize jingles in different areas. And I'm like, this is just so fascinating. I got to get involved. So at the age of 15, I'll try to do this quickly.
No, that's okay. This is fascinating stuff for a radio nerd like me.
And we are both radio nerds. So anyway, when I was 15 years old, my first year in high school, my grandfather Vito, as Italian as he can be, is still doing well. Who actually did a radio show on WBLQ for some time. But he said, Chris, there's this ad, he still has a raspy voice. There's this ad in the Westerly Sun, and it says this person, John Fuller, looking for a radio person, not personality, but just person to change the tapes, and they called it a weekend board tech at the time, and there were no computers there, and there were computers obviously, but they weren't being used in broadcast. So my job was to get there and sign the station on in the morning, turn the transmitter on, and then go rewind all the tapes, clean the tape heads. And my first thing I ever did on the air, working for your current boss, was I'd go on at the top of the hour and say, and with a very bad Rhode Island accent at the age of 15, Dupane gas time is 1 o'clock. Remember to rely on Dupane for all of your gas and propane needs. And I don't even know if Dupane's still around, but you can, obviously, that wasn't a commercial.
You've worked on your voice, because that Rhode Island accent is long gone now. So
the R's just evolved where they should be, and they got taken out where they shouldn't be.
I also had regionalism in my voice when I started out, but it's amazing, doing enough radio, it goes away after a while, because you enunciate. And I think people will bring it up to you, other people that are in the business, professionals, and that forces you to kind of, be, I don't want to say radio sounding, but a more generic sound.
And it's like, I don't want to use the word magic, but it is kind of like magic, how it just, sort of, as you get into radio, it just sort of happens. Because I don't ever remember, having a class or anything. I mean, I never went to school for it, but I don't ever remember, like, oh, wow, that's when I stopped saying, ahs and then said R's. It just sort of evolved over the years. But anyway, that's how I started out in radio, doing that. And then, of course, as you know, your boss grew, and I was with him for about 8 years. And then I left him and worked for another radio station with the same call letters that I have in Westerly now, WBLQ, and kind of did some radio freelancing at the time, and then started, similar to a previous guest that you had on, Mike Minarski, I started a low-power 100 milliwatt AM station and put up a couple of transmitters in Westerly. And then when the opportunity came along to get my first frequency, I filed for my first FCC license for 88.1 in Westerly, then filed for a low power FM, which became the Buzz in the early 2000s, actually 2000 to be exact. Then sold 88.1 to K-Love because it was a nonprofit frequency. They bought it. Took a little bit of that money, put it towards buying a commercial station, 1230 AM, and with the help of a local bank down the road, and then had 1230 and 96.7, and lo and behold, this guy that I knew for many years, who had not only owned local radio, but was also a voice in the Providence area, Mike Cardillo, who still has a Rhode Island accent, and I know, Mike, you're probably watching this, but he's a heck of a guy. And he called me up and he said, Chrissy, he calls me Chrissy. You know,
is everybody in the mob in Rhode Island? Apparently,
including Vito.
Vito, yeah, right, I was going to say.
He goes, Chrissy, I got the license for 95.1, but I'm not.
It's like a Sopranos episode going on here.
I can't really do it, and I was wondering if you know, this is something you'd be interested in. And then he went back and forth with me a couple of times with some numbers. And
did he make you an offer you couldn't refuse? Is that
after a few times, I told him what I was willing to pay for it.
Right.
And he said, no, I can't do it. I'm way too in deep. I can't do it for that amount. And maybe about a couple weeks later, he called me up. I'll take it. It wasn't that simple. Mike's probably watching this. It wasn't. He's a great guy, and I respect him a lot. And I would say this to his face. I hope you don't think I'm making fun of you, Mike, because he's a good guy. So anyway, he came down and met me in Westerly, and it happened. The transaction took place in May of 2015, where basically because I-95.1, because of its nonprofit corporate structure, with the money exchanging hands, I was basically buying what money he put into it so far. That's how you legally do it.
Why does it have to be nonprofit? Why can't it just be a station the way WBLQ is just a local station, locally owned, that can be for profit?
It's an FCC rule.
Okay.
It's LPFM. They're supposed to be
low power FM.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. LPFM stands for low power FM, and they're supposed to be nonprofit stations. And that's the way they're designed. And they're also supposed to be a maximum of 100 watts effective radiated power. But you can do all sorts of things with that. You can convince the FCC, and it's true in our case, that you have cable loss because you're running so much cable. I learned that from a guy that you work for. And
it was an expert on towers.
An expert on towers, and as John Fuller would say, height is might. Get up as high as you can. And one thing that Mike did have set up was where the antenna would be for the station before I took it over from him. I had to work out the particulars with the tower owner, which is SBA. They're not Small Business Administration, but they own a chain of cell phone towers, and was able to work out the negotiations for the rent and all of that stuff. And I said, I want to be up as high as I possibly can. I found out that where our antenna is at the Coventry, the old Nike missile site in Coventry, that's like the second or third, I think second highest point in Rhode Island.
And that's a big deal.
It's a big deal because with that low wattage, you want as much height as possible.
So you can cover a lot of ground then, even with just 100 watts.
And we do. We cover all of Coventry, West Warwick, and Warwick, and a little bit of Cranston, and a little bit of Scituate. And I realize we probably have, no offense to Scituate, we probably have more deer listening than we do people.
Well,
but no, there's businesses in Scituate. I do crack jokes from time to time, but there are a lot of people, and population-wise, I am so pleased and so thankful I was able to work out a deal with Mike Cardillo. His nickname is Mondo Mike. So if I ever refer to him as Mondo Mike, I'm talking about that guy who I got the license from. So anyway, Mondo Mike, just because it's easier for me. When I ended up getting the license, it took a little while to get things straightened out with the tower, and also getting my financials in place, because just because I bought the license very cheaply didn't mean that my money spending was over.
Right.
Had to now build the station. So February 7th of this year, 2016, kicked the transmitter on for 95.1 for the first time. It was a Sunday night. I had Steve Conti by my side.
He's an engineer extraordinaire, right?
He is, and he's, and no offense to you, because I love you, but he's my best friend.
Oh, no
and
problem.
I love him too.
That's no problem.
He's like my brother.
You've been with him forever,
Yes.
so that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't mind being a tertiary friend of yours. See you every once in a while, but too much is too much.
It's that radio, tertiary, secondary tones, tertiary. What happened to those? But anyway.
So you're talking. you described the 100-watt low power FMs. Now, how does your AM work as far as how much maximum range you can get out of it? Because we know, you and I know, that an AM signal is very different. It shoots straight up, bounces off the ionosphere, right? And that's different.
It's all about ground conductivity and ground waves. And the AM tower for WBLQ is, since 1949, has been located adjacent to the Pawcatuck River, because I took over an existing radio station. Way back in the day, it was WERI, which stood for Westerly, Rhode Island, and I took it over in 2009. And it's all about good ground conductivity with AM, and it's 1,000 watts. So out here, outside the studio where we're recording, I realize this is running all over Rhode Island, but we're actually recording this in Connecticut. I hope I'm not giving it away.
No, that's okay. We serve,
right.
our building serves both states. So.
Right. So where we're sitting right here, New London, Connecticut, the signal sounds like it's right in Westerly because it's so coastal. Salt water is such a great ground conductor.
Right?
So to answer your question about AM, the other thing about my AM station, WBLQ, is it's commercial. So out of the 3 stations, I can run it as a full-fledged commercial station, where on my 2 nonprofit stations, the Buzz, which is in Ashaway, Rhode Island, and that's owned by the Buzz Alternative Radio Foundation, and I-95.1, which is owned by the Marconi Broadcasting Foundation, which Michael Cardillo created. We have certain rules we need to follow. They sound just like commercials. So, I mean, if anybody's looking to promote their business, we can make them sound just like a commercial. There's 3 rules we have to follow. Number 1, no mention of price.
Right.
So can't mention price.
No call to action. Right?
Number 2 is no call to action. I mean, you can make these whatever numbers you want. I'm making it number 2. Number 2, so I can't say, come on down, but I can say, you can come on down. And it's funny because...
It's really just semantics.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, and then number 3 is no comparative language, which is a really gray area. I mean, I can say, Sean Murphy's Burger House has outstanding, delicious burgers. That's fine.
And they would if I had a place.
I know you would, and I'd be eating them. And so would you, actually.
Yeah.
You would have nothing to sell them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But anyway, so let's say, you know, that I said outstanding, great burgers. That's fine. But if I said the best burgers in town, then that's comparative. Or if I'd said better, you know, better or best, those are comparative statements. But again, the third one is probably the most gray out of all of them. But we can still make them sound just like commercials. We'll give the businesses what they want. And I have a feeling, I wish I had more time because...
I just want to tell you, we're not going to go to break because this is a radio guy and he's just going to talk forever.
I will.
So we're going to skip the break in the middle. I hope my director's all right with that, but we're doing it anyway.
Yes, sorry, Aaron over there. I like referring to people's names because on Match Game, Gene Rayburn always said, slide it, Earl. He gave credit to people, so we mentioned Aaron's name. But anyway, getting back to the radio station, when it comes to those announcements, I think in the future, the FCC will loosen up. And the reason I say that is, and it might not happen next year, it might not happen by the year 2020, but it's going to happen because not only have they been downsizing the FCC, but with the competition with digital media, which by the way is not hurting us, it's only helping us.
Right, I'm going to get into that with you in a little bit.
But there's so many choices out there. There's actually a movement, and you can actually go online and look this up, where low-power FM operators like me have all filed a petition, and it all got signed off in September of 2015. And basically, it's requesting permission from the FCC to just run commercials on LPFMs. Because, you know, it's expensive to run a radio station. Right. I mean, we're doing well. I'm so thankful that we're doing as well as we are. But it is expensive, and in order to you have to make the people who are giving you money happy, and that's what we do. We care about all of our customers, our benefactors. We want to do as much as we can for them. And when the FCC has a gazillion restrictions in place... Do
you just want to have it not be a not-for-profit, basically? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we are nonprofit. What I want...
No, but you want it to be, you want that to be removed, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. In other words, we want to be able to run full-fledged commercials without those 3 restrictions that I just told you about.
And why not? If it's if it's low power, why not? You know, you're serving the local community. I mean, regional stations are one thing where they're, you know, covering half the state or something, but when you're talking local community radio...
Right, and the other good thing is, too, I'm glad you brought that up, is I'm very fortunate to live in an area where all of the radio station people know each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and if anybody's watching this who is involved in ownership of other radio stations, they know exactly where I'm coming from with this. I can say, honestly, that I'm friends or on a friendly basis with just about everybody. I don't think there's anybody I don't know in these markets. And when I say markets plural, I mean southeastern Connecticut and also the Rhode Island, Providence, Warwick, Pawtucket market.
Everybody's doing live broadcasts, and sometimes we're at the same events all the time. And there's really not too many people that don't like each other. Because we've all worked together in the past, possibly in the future. You know,
we give leads to each other.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no question. I've already mentioned John Fuller a bunch of times that he and I have remained.
You're considered part of the family, our company. company family.
And likewise with you. I mean, I know a guy named Chris Hampton sounds just like me over at your place. But there's other.
That guy's a jerk. But go on.
Yeah, he's a little snooty. Yeah. But also, in Rhode Island, I know folks like like Bonnie Gomes, and even the folks at iHeartMedia, and I know I'm going to leave people out. So if I'm leaving anybody out, I apologize.
And you can't get any bigger a radio company nationwide than iHeartMedia, formerly Clear Channel.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't get too much bigger than that.
And guys like Jim Reed will just call me up as a friend and say, "Hey man, I'm listening to 95.1, and I heard Neil Young, Heart of Gold. Oh man, the audio sounds great."
And he works for Hall Radio out of Norwich, Connecticut, and technically that's a competitor to all of us, but we're all friends. He's a great guy,
And anybody who knows him thinks that I just did a wonderful impression of him. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true too.
But getting back to the news station, I-95.1. After we got through WBLQ and the buzz, I told you how all that came about. Well, Mike Cardillo and I sat down. I built the station. It went on the air February 7th. And my original intention was...
Where are their studios at, by the way?
We're getting to that.
Okay, sorry. All right. This is your show, so go ahead.
Yes. Anyway, that's okay. So the station went on February 7th. My original intention was, you know what? Thank you, Aaron. It's going to be a little bit of time before I get a studio up here. I figured, we'll just, do a jukebox of classic rock music, and I'll record everything in Westerly.
Right, to start off with.
Yeah,
anyway.
because that's the norm. And I figured, I honestly thought, it's going to be at least a good year before I have its own studio up there, and it's going to take a little time. I in my head, because I've done this twice before, I figured I would take as baby steps as possible, and I mean like really minuscule baby steps. But the response was unbelievable. It was unbelievable, especially with the format that I picked. I mean, I only talked to a few people before it went on, but classic rock, I mean, I also thought about this. I mean, you've got a station in Providence doing AOR, doing new rock and classic rock. You've got a station in Providence doing classic hits, which is what, oldies evolved into at the time. But you had nobody doing classic rock, which is why I picked it. And I am not following a corporate playlist. We just kind of did our own thing. I had my office manager, Lauren Kleinkoff, and my operations manager, J.J. McDade. They actually sat down in Westerly, went through all of the music. I just compiled a bunch of music. I can't say where I got it from, but I had permission, and we compiled a bunch of music, and they went through it. They made sure all the levels were equalized, and they had their own little meeting, and JJ and Lauren went back and forth. No, that song stays. That song goes. That's JJ's voice. Right. That song stays.
I'm well aware.
So then once they did that, I took the little technology. You got to love it. I took the little I had 3,500 songs. See my hand right there? I took the 3,500 songs. That's how heavy it was, and I brought it up a little tiny hard drive.
Yeah.
I brought it up to the transmitter, loaded in all the music, and again, I figured we'll just do everything out of Westerly just to get this place going. But like I said, the response was so unbelievable. Our playlist is, and I'll admit to this day, it's all over the place. It's all the classic rock genre. And the demand for us to have more of a local presence came about. So we weren't even through the entire month of March yet. And remember, we went on February 7th. And Damian Rufo, I got to give him big kudos.
The ladies love him.
They really do.
Yeah.
The Vice President of Sales and Promotions is his title. And he organized the deal with the landlord. Of course, you got to meet this guy. Adrian Construction is the name of it. He showed me the office. I said, this is it. This is where we're going to be. It looks like it's made for a radio station. 820 Tioga Avenue, which is another name for Route 3. The locals refer to it as Tioga up there. And I walked inside. I said, this is it. So if any of you go on the I-95.1 Facebook page and go all the way down, you'll see the video of me actually signing the check and handing it over to the landlord, signing the lease. And there we are. And now we have our own studio at 820 Tioga Avenue. So after we did that, in my head, I'm thinking, well, you know what? We're doing this for local presence. People will see that we have a spot up here, but we're still really doing everything out of Westerly. I mean, I'm very transparent when it comes to how we do things. I'm not going to put up any smoke screens or anything. So then a guy by the name of Kickin' Al comes to the station. Yeah, I'd love to do a live show. And he came from Kicks 106.
So now the staff is starting to get involved.
The staff is starting to get involved. And John Parenti, who was a staple in Warwick Radio, worked at the old 1450 WKRI. Everybody knew him from that station. I'd like to get involved, so made him station manager. He's now doing news every hour. and is recording it, you know, updating it. When I say recording news, I don't want to let everybody know, oh, we record our news. He's updating it throughout the day from his house.
That's fine.
He has a home studio. But I'm still in my head thinking it's going to be a little while before we have the studio active at 820 Tioga Avenue.
I just got to speed you up a little bit, just only because we're running out of time.
How much time do we have?
Well, I want to ask you a few more questions before we wrap up.
Let me get this
okay,
really quick.
I'm going to have you just wrap that up. Go ahead.
All right. So anyway, as far as the studio went, I built a little encoder with the help of SecureNet Systems, which allows me to broadcast from the studio to the transmitter. And we started doing live shows before the end of April. So now we have live all-request shows that are coming out of 820 Tioga, not voice-tracked, but live. We have Kick and Al is live in the afternoon, 3 to 7. We have a guy by the name of John Butello, very active with the local fire department in West Warwick. Johnny Boots is his nickname. And the Iceman, he's like Wolfman Jack, the Iceman. He's doing a show on Saturday nights from 7 to midnight, live in the studio, and more live shows are following. John Parenti will be live 6 to 10. By the time this airs, he might already be live.
You doing live broadcasts yet? Remotes, anything like that yet? Okay, good.
Yes.
You're all over the place, too.
We are.
So you mentioned staff. So, I mean, even down my way, there's so many people that we have all worked with. I know some of your staff in Westerly. You mentioned Lauren. He's a great guy. One guy that we all know, Ron Carson, he's been at pretty much every radio company in the area, right?
He is. There's so many people at the station, and I always get nervous when I do this because when I watch the show later, I'm like, oh, I forgot to mention so-and-so's
You're never
name.
going to be able to get everybody in.
No, but there's so many great people at the station.
Mark Sullivan?
Yep, my significant other, Lena. Thank you so much,
works,
Lena.
yep.
Yep, I mean, you go down the list. But up there in Coventry, West Warwick, we have our whole new group of people up there, and just a great bunch of folks.
You believe in community radio, local radio. I always say that one thing that we can do, even in my stations, which are regional, they still are local. They can do things that Pandora and Spotify and satellite radio can't do, and that's be local. We can tell you if there's an accident on the highway or if school is canceled, if there's a fire somewhere, and that's important to people.
Local information, absolutely. You want to know what's going on. And I know I'm not allowed to mention commercial businesses, but there's a certain car dealer in Plainfield I'd like to say thank you to because they helped me get the ball rolling with everything.
Okay, Central. I do stuff there too, so I can say that. Chris, I've never talked so little on a show ever, of my own show, because you just pretty much said everything too. But I love it. So thank you for being on.
Well, I love you too.
I wish you all the luck with your stations, and we'll have you on again for, and maybe I'll talk a little bit for the next show. How about that?
And we'd love to have you on up in Coventry one day.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you.
Right,
Chris DiPaolo, appreciate it. You can see this show, by the way, on YouTube as well as many other shows. Until next time, I'm Sean Murphy with Chris DiPaolo. Thank you. We'll see you again next time.